Next up, Boker Vox D2. Kind of an all-rounder. Tactical blade, medium survival blade. Doesn't have a lot of span for doing this stuff, so basically when I've done another split, I can bring it into action. Full flat grind. Oh baby. I like this knife. D2 steel. Oops, kind of crooked. Hope I'm in frame with you dudes. Good enough. Power it. Let's see if that D2 will break. That's a knot. So far so good. Any knife will break though, dudes, you know that. Always bring a second blade up here if it's really important. Wind kicking up. Probably be a windy hike out. Actually, I didn't say it right. It's actually the Vox. I think I called it the Rocks. That's so funny. The Boker Vox, or Vox, however he says it. It's the designer. See, this is where this knife really comes into its own. This flat grind, forward finger choil. I'm talking about when I get down to basically kindling size wood or carving, where I need to carve, maybe make a spear or something. That flat grind. I got a knot right here. That's why it's hanging up. That cuts like a mother. Get rid of that knot. There we go. Not really sharpening this other than to test the knife, but I'm not sharpening the stick for a purpose yet. Make a fuzz stick. It's pretty sharp. It's a crappy fuzz stick. These fuzzy portions have to be basically slivers. It's ready for action. Boker in the house. Wilderness expedition. Jeremiah Johnson style. So many great blades, so little time, and yet I have to admit, I haven't done a great job representing the Boker brand here in the Nutnfancy project. I want to change that, and who knows, maybe this video will start a trend. Hey guys, Nutnfancy fixed blade knife review right now on a Boker knife, a classic design, the kind that I love. In fact, it's made by the same dude that put this knife together that's featured on the 2011 Boker Dealer's Catalog. I think they call this one the Collection 2011, kind of an unusual name for a knife. Interesting blade. I love this shape actually. Real thick steel. Who knows, maybe I'll hook into that one time. But the one I'm going to concentrate on right now is right below it in the catalog. This one right here. When I saw that one, I was immediately interested because it features those classic lines. It's a full flat ground knife, and I hope I get this name right. It is called the Boker plus the full name, Vox Rold. Did I even say that right? Vox Rold? I don't know. I'm just going to call it the Rold. I'm probably saying it wrong. Here it is in real life. Fresh from testing here in the Nutnfancy project. It came with me on the Jeremiah Johnson excursion with Allie the Mountain Dog, and I thumped on it. I mean, it's been tested. I feel confident enough to roll it in front of my tabletop and tell you how it performed. Let's get going. philosophy of use. I would say this is a great medium-sized outdoor knife. Well, that's a big knife for me, Nutnfancy. I don't think so. Its blade length, as it says right here, 6 1/8 inches. To me, that's a medium-sized. You guys know I like the larger blades when I'm out there banging around on the wood in the wilderness, and I usually will go for a bigger blade. What's nearby? Oh, I've got some way behind here. You've seen them, kind of like the Spyderco Hossam Forester, Ontario RTAC 2, Cold Steel Trailmaster, the other big blades that can minimize my work. However, I'm not like everyone, as you probably have seen in my knife reviews, and there's lots of folks out there that think a 6-inch or even a 7-inch blade is buku metal for them up there to do what they need to do with their bushcrafting, firecrafting, whatever. I think it's a great medium-sized option. We'll talk about the blade here in just a second. How about a tactical blade? Something you could defend your life with. The Vox Rold knife. Rold. I'm going to confuse that this whole review. It's a little bit heavy. The weight on it is actually mislisted in this catalog. If my scale's working right, it says right here the blade is 10.5 ounces. No way. I measure it at 13.2 ounces naked, and then with its sheath, which I actually like, I'll talk about it, 14.8 ounces is the weight. Kind of stout, and when we talk about that weight, we're going to open up a lot of other options perhaps for a tactical blade. I do think the clip blade itself, and I'll go ahead and start talking about the blade shape, I guess, design in steel, is excellent. It's just a standard, again, classically configured, full flat ground clip blade, this time in D2 steel, a semi-stainless tool steel. I've never been a huge fan of D2, not so much, because it's hard to sharpen, and depending what knife it is, sometimes it's hard to get a really fine edge out of it, and it will rust on you. However, okay, that's the downsides. In my testing, this knife pretty much rocked. Okay, it split wood well, it chopped well. No, it wasn't like, you know, a week's worth of pounding on the blade. And actually the best test for D2, like I've said perhaps in some other videos, might be in really cold weather. 0 degrees Fahrenheit would be an example, where you can get the blade steel really brittle, because D2 kind of has a reputation for that, and see if it will break on you. Didn't get to test it to that level, sorry. It did, like I say, perform very well in all the other testing. Let's see how the edge is after splitting lots of logs and kindling. Okay, normally I don't do this because, I don't know, just not interested. Oh, dudes, what? I did not touch this knife up at all. In fact, it was very sharp out of box. This is after doing all the splitting up there. Wow. I want to do a few more of those because I'm so impressed with that after work edge, as I'll call it. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. Wow. I'm impressed. You know, I say I don't like D2 that much. Maybe I like this D2. It seems like it performed pretty awesome up there in the high elevations, in the snow, in the cold. That's a D2, beautiful blade shape. And notice there is a little bit of, I don't know what you call those. I would say notches probably on the top side of the blade. They're not really jumping. There's a serial number. I got 331, yo. It does give some control, actually. Decent. And then you got, of course, no unsharpened swedge right here. And actually, in the philosophy of use as a woods blade, maybe that's good. Okay, but getting back to the tactical POU, I was talking about the blade shape. It will penetrate well. It's got great belly. It could work that way. And also as an all-around food preparation and camp knife, I think the Vox Rold is a good option. That's all I'm going to say about POU. The balance, I think, is excellent. It is a thick slab of steel. Check it. Forgot to measure it, but it strikes me as something like, I don't know, approaching a 1/4 inch thick. That's a slab. A lot of you guys like the thick steel, the full, obviously, full tang design. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. How about the handle? That's G10 with They call it red fiber liners, I think is what Jesper calls it. And by the way, if I didn't say that, the designer's name is, here I go again, butchering the Danish language, Jesper Voxnes. Voxnes? Jesper? Sorry, dude, man. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say it. I just probably ought to Americanize it. He makes actually a custom version of this knife. It's just as cool. I went on his website looking around at some older versions. I noticed it looked like the blade was a little bit shorter, 5.5 inches for the Vox Rold custom. And he made different colorations of it in different handle scales. I think he coated some of them. Very nice looking blades. Since they are custom, probably hand manufactured by himself, they're going to be a lot more than this knife. You know, get ready to pony up cost-wise. We'll talk about value here in a second. But back to the handle. Notice the big rivet openings. I like how he does this on several of his designs. One, it lightens the handle, and two, it provides a great place to put a lanyard, either forward-mounted or aft-mounted. Take your pick. Great job, Jesper. Like that. And the overall ergonomics of the handle are excellent. Maybe a little bit, just a little bit on the short side for me. But I didn't notice me banging into this while I was chopping with it. Not that I did a lot of chopping. It's mostly wood splitting. Reverse grip, I don't know why you'd want to do that with this knife. I guess you could do it. Flared out at the end. Really nice handle. Notice how it's swelled in the middle. Tapered back here. Gorgeous classic design. And since this is in the Boker Plus lineup, it is made overseas. You can see it right here. China! It's kind of confusing if you're new to the Boker lineup, especially as Americans, because they have several lines. I'll just cover this really quick. Like this line is made in Germany. That's their, I think, top of the line. Then they have their Argentine-produced Arbolito Boker. The Boker Plus is where I'm concentrating now. And then you have a Taiwan or Chinese-produced Magnum. And then it goes on and on. This is in the Boker Plus lineup. It's made in China. But everything I can see says it has very awesome quality controls. By the way, I don't know if I showed you that tip yet. Let's take a look at it. I did, but I didn't talk about it. It's actually a pretty stout tip, which I found when I was smacking on it with a baton going through the wood. Now remember, when I wood test, I have to use what I have up there at the time. And so on that outing, it was pretty much aspen. You know, you might baton through some very sappy or wet or ultra dense wood, and maybe on some blades you would see a failure. I can't do that. All I can provide is my data point with what Mother Nature provides me on an outing or a series of outings. Let's talk about the sheath. My understanding is that Jesper wanted it changed. This might be the old version, I'm not really sure, but I like this one. It's fine. It is made out of Kydex. It fits nicely, and I think some guys were criticizing it. Let me put it in right. For the looks, I don't know why really, because if I look at some of the custom Kydex sheaths I have, they look about the same. You know, are they paddle-like? I don't know. It's a custom Kydex sheath. What else are you going to do with it? They all look that way. The only criticism I guess I could say on this particular version of the Rold sheath is that the Tech Lock fastener here will not go any higher than that, and it does add some weight. In fact, some of that 14 ounce or 15 ounce carry weight of the Vox Rold can be attributed to the Tech Lock and the Kydex. Okay, I would like it to be mounted up a little bit higher. I guess I could throw some screws up here. No, I couldn't, because then I'd only have one screw through it. So that's probably what you have. Like I say, this is probably the older version. I did look at another version of the sheath, and it also is excellent. So I really wouldn't worry about it. If you get a Vox Rold, I think either way, you're going to get a win with the sheath. It's synthetic. It doesn't absorb moisture. It's just a nice sheath. I think it's, like I said, excellent. How about competitive options? Let's talk about value first, and that'll kind of set the stage where we're at. About $100. If you go in the upper right, you're going to get it for less at one of my recommended knife retailers in the Nutnfancy project. Around $92 there. Snapshot in time, early 2012. I think that is an excellent price for the amount of capability you're going to get in this mid-sized, I don't know, let's call it a survival knife, camp knife. Okay, so competitively speaking though, we talked about the weight, and that will open up a lot of options for us. I'm going to start off with something off the charts. I know you didn't see this one coming. How about, a Tops Poseidon. I call it a Poseidon. Light Traveler. Not reviewed yet in the Nutnfancy project, and this has a more preferred steel for me personally, a 154 cm blade. Much thinner though. Definitely not the same thickness of the Vox Rold. What I will say though is they have basically the same beautiful blade shape. Classic full flat ground clip blade. This has micarta scales, great handle, and a lot of real estate on the Poseidon as well. Great blade. It won't hack nearly as well as that one, of course. In camp task, food preparation, maybe even wood splitting, probably just as good. And then several of the competition, or I should say competitive offerings that I'm going to throw at you are from SOG. SOG Knives makes some great stainless steel survival knives. Here comes one. The SOG Force. It went on the same trip as this one did, and it split well. And look at the blade thicknesses between the SOG Force and the Vox Rold.
As long as you can span the wood.
That's a thick blade, that Force. About the same blade length too, maybe just a little bit longer. No, it isn't. Let me line it up right here. I'm looking through the viewfinder, sorry. A little bit longer with the Vox Rold. Another option. This one weighs 15.4 ounces, so about the same weight. It's AUS 8 steel, cryoed AUS 8, and it costs the same price. Actually, maybe a little bit more, about $105 for the SOG Force. That's a great blade. Another option. Here comes a couple I reviewed a long time ago in the Nutnfancy project. SOG gov-tac. That one's been Duracoated by MissionSpecCamo.com. I think that's Black Hawk Coyote Tan. And then, man, we haven't seen or talked about this one forever, the SOG Tech Bowie knife. Man, those are good blades. 13.6 ounces, 13.8 ounces. They're going to be lighter than the carry weight of the Vox Rold. They're both in cryoed AUS 8 steel. Last time I checked, around 75, about 102. Great options. However, I gotta say this, they're different. One, this one's a gorgeous knife. I just don't know if I could ever go out and thump on this knife. And it's a kind of, the old throwback Vietnam era SOG style of blade. So even though it's a stainless steel, I guess, outdoor blade, different than this one. Definitely doesn't have the span, doesn't have the thickness of the Vox Rold. It's an interesting comparison, nevertheless. Here comes a really affordable one that does have about the same thickness. The Buck Nighthawk whip sound. You'll see the review on this pretty quickly. I'm done with my testing on it. It's in 420 high carbon stainless steel, 12 ounces, so it's going to be about 3 ounces lighter, and it's going to be about $50. The Buck Nighthawk. Again, it's a different style of blade altogether. It is stainless steel, and sorry, I just don't have that many stainless steel mid-sized survival knives running around here in the project as of late. Thick blade though, that Nighthawk, and it actually split pretty well. Has a weird balance to it. It's very front heavy. The Vox Rold balance is better. How about two kinds of cool? Well, I'll tell you what. Jesper puts together a mean knife from what I can tell. And dude, I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right. I'll just call him Jay. Jay for short. Puts together a very nice, classically designed knife. I looked at some of his other designs, and we have kind of similar tastes as shown in this one. First, kind of cool. It's very useful in its role as an outdoor knife. Second, kind of cool is it's not something you see very often. Yeah, it's made in China, but it is a more affordable version of his custom Vox Rold knife. And I think in that perspective, it's a pretty cool blade. I think the value is smoking for what you get. You might take exception to the D2 steel. Seeing how sharp it is after I'm done and seeing what it did for me up there, I don't really. Not in this particular knife. Would I like to see AUS 8, 154 cm, maybe S30V? Yeah, I would. In the same slab though, can you imagine what the cost would be? That thick of a slab of S30V steel, S35. I don't know, man. It'd probably be pretty pricey. I think for what it is, as it's put together right now in 2012, it has a huge attraction to me for its classic lines, its thickness, its full flat grind, great handle, big old rivets there that lighten the handle up, and fair price. That's a Nutnfancy review. Hope you liked it. Thanks, Boker Vox Rold? Still don't know how to say it. Out.